السلفية هي الأصل يا أخي، ما هي بحزب من الأحزاب، هي الأصل.
إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء.
السلفية هي اتباع منهج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. This is a continuation of the series of the Aqidah of the Imams of the Salaf, and we were talking about the creed of Imaam Abu Hanifah rahmatullahi alae, and we reached till the part where Imaam Abu Hanifah rahmatullahi alae says in his book Al-Fiqh Al-Akbar, he says, وَالطَّاعَاتُ كُلُّهَا مَا كَانَتْ واجبة بأمر الله تعالى وبمحبته وبرضائه وعلمه ومشيئته وقضائه وتقديره. And all the acts of obedience, all of them, that which are obligatory, all of them are بأمر الله سبحانه وتعالى, by the order of Allah, وبمحبته, with his love, وبرضائه, and he is pleased with it, وعلمه, with his knowledge, ومشيئته, his will, وقضائه, his creating it, وتقديره, and his destining it. والمعاصي كلها بعلمه وقضائه وتقديره, and all the disobedience, they are by his knowledge, his creating, and his decree. ومشيئته, and by his will. لا بمحبته, but he does not love it, it is not by his love. ولا برضائه, and not with his acceptance. ولا بأمره, and not by his order as well. Now here, one question is raised, that why is kufr here? Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will the kufr to be in this dunya, in this world? Because all the disobedience, as we are seeing it, they are by the order of they are by the decree of Allah, by the will of Allah, and by the creating of Allah, by the knowledge of Allah. Because nothing can happen, not even a leaf can move, except by the knowledge and except by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why do we have kufr in this dunya? Did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed kufr to be here? The answer is yes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed it, but with his irada al-kawniyah, with his universal will, which has no relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loving that particular action. But that thing comes to happen, that thing will happen, because of the irada kawniyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of the universal will of Allah. It will happen. The other type of will is al-irada al-shar'iyyah, the will which is the legislative will. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves this to happen, and it is not necessary that thing happens. Subhanallah. That thing which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, it is not necessary that it will happen. And that thing which has no relationship with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that thing will come to pass, that thing will happen. Allahu Akbar. So the acts of obedience is by the irada ashra, is due by the irada ashra'iyyah, the legislative will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the acts of disobedience are by the universal will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not loves disobedience, and He does not orders disobedience to His slaves. Now some people made a mistake and said that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills and wants kufr and iman, then why would He punish a kafir for his kufr? Because it is by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then punish a kafir because of his kufr? This is the mistake of Qadariyya and Mu'tazila. The Qadariyya and Mu'tazila, they have denied the irada al-kawniyya, the universal will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Jabariyya, on the other hand, have denied the legislative will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Qadariyya, they say everything is created with the man's own hand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no part in the decree of the people. Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrees the will of the people and then punishes them or rewards them, then this is just a play. Na'udhu billah. And the Jabariyya, on the other hand, they say that we are helpless, we are forced to do everything. Whatever we do, it is by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So both of these people went into two opposite extremes. But Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they stayed in the middle path. And they accepted both the irada, both will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not enforce His will on anyone. The irada shari'iyya. Nothing can happen without the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has willed everything, but He has not forced kufr and sin on anyone. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Whoever wants to believe can believe, and whoever wants to commit kufr can stay a kafir, a disbeliever. Imaam Abu Hanifah rahmatullahi alayhi here have used the word al-mashi'a, which is usually used for the universal will. Some of the ulama, they differentiate between the words irada and mashi'a. But Imaam Abu Hanifah rahmatullahi alayhi seems to be of the ulama, of the scholars, who use the word mashi'a for both the wills. So, continuing ahead, there are some things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, and they are present at some places, and there are stuff that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like, but they are present as well. Why? Because of the universal will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there was no kufr or shirk, just think about it, just ponder upon this situation. If there was no kufr or no shirk in this dunya, how would one recognize tawheed or iman? You cannot know the opposite without having the original thing there. So we have shirk, we have kufr. That is why we know what is tawheed, what is iman. Some people say, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had willed, could He not create everyone on iman? The answer is yes. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everyone upon tawheed and iman, then where is the test of the dunya, of the world? خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created death and life to see who amongst you is the best in actions. Then where is the test? If the purpose is the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there are angels already. The angels, they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala day and night without getting tired in worshipping Him. Subhanallah. They worship Him alone without committing any sins. Then why are humans created then? The human beings, they are accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angels are not. The animals are not. The rocks are not. The mountains are not. Subhanallah. This is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That you cannot will except by the will of Allah, the Lord of every, the Lord of the Aaameen, the Lord of the creation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given free will to humans, and Allah Himself has will as well. But the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the will of the human beings. Our will is dependent upon the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we will something, that cannot happen unless and until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not denied the will of the human beings. And the Jabariyya, they deny the legislative irada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only they accepted the Kuni Qadri irada, the universal will, because they read the verses separately. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, what do? They gather all the verses, all the hadith on one topic, they gather them together, and then they understand in the proper manner. Then they understand with the understanding of the Salaf Salihin. This is the proper way, this is the proper method to understand the context. So Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they saw that there is a universal will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it happens, and they also saw that there is also a legislative will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they also saw the human beings have will as well.